Thank you, Nina and Ricky. Good evening, everyone. I'm Alma Angeles for NET25 World News. On tonight's headlines.
U.S. President Trump's envoy met Ukraine's President Zelensky in Kiev, but officials say the talks haven't yet addressed the deep wartime rift.
Look, President Trump is obviously very frustrated right now with President Zelensky. The fact that that he hasn't come to the table, that he hasn't been willing to take this opportunity that we have offered. I think he eventually will get to that point, and I hope so very quickly.
Prime Minister Netanyahu warned Hamas will pay for failing to release the body of hostage Sherry Bibas, escalating threats to the Gaza ceasefire. Israeli experts confirmed one of the 4 bodies handed over by Hamas was an unidentified woman, not Bibas.
Here's a photo of the Bibas brothers. These perfect children again were 4 years old and less than 1 year old when the Hamas savages snatched them from their mother's arms. She fought like a lioness to protect her boys.
And Italy authorities are warning, but not for the reason you think. Tonight we report on Mount Etna, which has been erupting for days. Officials are urging tourists to steer clear.
And the news starts now. Several developments in the Ukraine-Russia war. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky met with U.S. envoy Keith Kellogg. Donald Trump's national security advisor, Mike Waltz, scolded Zelensky for not signing a deal, giving up half the country's minerals to repay U.S. wartime aid. Further aid to Ukraine may end, according to House Speaker Mike Johnson. In Europe, there are warnings not to give in to Russian aggression and questions about whether Russian President Vladimir Putin is really serious about getting a peace deal. Thomas I. Likeness for more.
Tensions are high between Ukraine and the U.S. after President Donald Trump called Zelensky a dictator and said Ukraine started the war with Russia. Zelensky responded by saying Trump is in a bubble of Russian misinformation. The Ukrainian president met Thursday with U.S. envoy Keith Kellogg. But the U.S. abruptly canceled a planned news conference after the meeting, offering no explanation. Zelensky did say, though, that he had restored hope after speaking with Kellogg.
General Kellogg, our talks restore hope. We need strong agreements with America, agreements that will really work. I gave instructions to work fast and very much even-handedly. Economic interests and security interests should always go hand in hand, and the details of the agreement are important. The better the details are drafted, the better the result. We spoke with General Kellogg about the front line, the need to free all of our prisoners of war who are held in Russia, and also the necessity of a reliable and well-defined system of security guarantees so the war doesn't return and Russians are no longer able to maim life. We all need peace. Ukraine, Europe, America, everyone in the world.
Kellogg has offered no comment on the talks. In Washington, more harsh words for Zelensky, this time from National Security Advisor Mike Waltz. Waltz says Trump is running out of patience with the Ukrainian president.
His frustration with President Zelensky is that you've heard is multifold. One, there needs to be a deep appreciation for what the American people, what the American taxpayer, what President Trump did in his first term, and what we've done since. So some of the rhetoric coming out of Kyiv, frankly, and insults to President Trump were unacceptable.
Waltz says Trump is also upset Zelensky has not signed a deal to give the U.S. a large chunk of Ukraine's rare earth minerals.
President Trump is obviously very frustrated right now with President Zelensky. The fact that that he hasn't come to the table, that he hasn't been willing to take this opportunity that we have offered. I think he eventually will get to that point, and I hope so very quickly.
And it looks like congressional support for Ukraine is waning. Speaking to the Conservative Political Action Conference, House Speaker Mike Johnson hints the flow of money from Washington may be shut off.
There's no appetite for that. What do you think? No. Yeah. got our answer there.
We have to bring it to an end, and I can tell you that our European allies understand the necessity of this as well.
And while Europe would like to see an end to this war, EU Foreign Policy Chief Kaja Kallas says she doesn't believe Russia really wants peace. And she says in its haste to get a peace deal, the U.S. is rewarding Russian aggression. Kallas warns about pandering to Moscow.
Let us understand what kind of signal we are sending if we are giving everything on the plate to the aggressor. It sends a signal to all the aggressors in the world that you can do this, because they will offer you on top of it something else.
British Foreign Minister David Lammy is also skeptical of Russia's claim to want peace. Lammy says he saw no evidence of that during discussions Thursday at a meeting of G20 foreign ministers in South Africa.
I don't see an appetite to really get to that peace. And that peace could be achieved by leaving Ukraine tomorrow, just going and letting people get on with their lives and letting them have their sovereignty.
There will be more talks with Trump next week. On Monday, he will meet with French President Emmanuel Macron and British Prime Minister Keir Starmer. And as the war enters its fourth year, Ukrainians endure scenes like this across the country, a never-ending barrage of Russian airstrikes. For Ukrainians living with this horror, they dream of peace, but peace that sees the uninvited occupiers leave and their country's borders restored. Thomas I. Likeness, NET25 World News.
Airlines modified flight paths between Australia and New Zealand after China notified Australia that the People's Liberation Army Navy would hold live fire exercises off the New South Wales coast in international waters, a rare event. Australia's Prime Minister Anthony Albanese told reporters today that the time period for the Chinese Navy exercises had expired, and it was unclear if live fire had been used by the Chinese Navy. A People's Liberation Army Navy frigate, cruiser, and replenishment vessel last week entered Australia's maritime approaches and traveled down Australia's east coast this week, monitored by the navies and air forces of Australia and New Zealand. Airlines were contacted by Australia's Air Traffic Control Agency on Friday, warning them of reports of live fire where the Chinese Navy Task Group was operating.
China issued, in accordance with practice, an alert that it would be conducting these activities, including the potential use of live fire. It's outside of Australia's exclusive economic zone. Australia and New Zealand ships and P-8 aircraft have been monitoring the Chinese fleet while they have been travelling down the coast of Australia, off the coast. I've spoken with the Chief of the Defence Force, the Defence Minister Richard Marles, the Foreign Minister Penny Wong, and I've also had contact with the New Zealand Prime Minister Christopher Luxon this afternoon. It is the case that the notice was given. When that occurs, airlines are notified and stay out of the area. Air Services Australia also has been informed and has taken action as well. That time has expired now. According to the Chief of the Defence Force, it has advised that it's not clear whether there was any actual live fire used in this area, but it is consistent with international law.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu instructed the military to carry out an intensive operation in the West Bank after explosions on buses close to Tel Aviv in what Netanyahu's office described as an attempted mass attack. No casualties were reported. The Israeli police earlier said there had been explosions on 3 buses in 2 Israeli suburbs outside Tel Aviv, and that 4 explosive devices had been found. Local media reported the explosions had occurred on buses in depots and were empty.
So unfortunately, I don't have a choice. I need to take public transportation. I was a little bit hesitant. I rely that the people who who need to take care of it. I understood yesterday they did go through all the buses and did do the checks that they needed to do. And I was relying on that. Thank God. I do rely that, unfortunately, we have to be always on top of these things, but we need to make sure that these things don't happen. I feel that today we know our enemy a little bit better, and we won't allow what happened 20 years ago on any level to happen again.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said that Israel would make Hamas pay for failing to release the body of hostage Sherry Bibas as agreed.
Tragic day. It's a day of boundless sorrow, of indescribable pain. 4-year-old Ariel Bibas, his baby brother, 1-year-old Kfir, and 84-year-old Oded Lifshitz were brutally murdered by Hamas savages. Their bodies returned home to a nation in mourning, a nation that will never forget and never forgive the evil that cut down these beautiful souls. The Bibas children in particular became the symbol of who we are and who we're fighting against. Here's a photo of the Bibas brothers. These perfect children again were 4 years old and less than 1 year old when the Hamas savages snatched them from their mother's arms. She fought like a lioness to protect her boys. Just imagine their horror. Imagine their confusion. Perfect little children who never hurt a soul. A baby for the love of God. They languished in captivity until Hamas murdered them in cold blood. Who kidnaps a little boy and a baby and murders them? Monsters, that's who. These Hamas monsters also cynically refused to bring back the boy's mother, Shiri, and sent the body of a Gazan woman instead, in brazen violation of the agreement. Today, the heavens shake. The entire civilized world should condemn these horrific murders. The entire civilized world should join Israel in demanding the immediate release of all the hostages. All of Israel is united in grief. And as the Prime Minister of Israel, I vow that I will not rest until the savages who executed our hostages are brought to justice. They do not deserve to walk this earth. Nothing will stop me. Nothing.
Palestinian group Hamas said today the remains of Israeli hostage Sherry Bibas appear to have been mixed with other human remains from the rubble after an Israeli airstrike hit the place she was held in. Now, this statement came after Israeli officials and specialists said that one of the 4 bodies handed over by Hamas on Thursday was an unidentified woman and not Sherry Bibas, whose 2 sons, Kfir and Ariel, were handed over and identified. Netanyahu accused Hamas of acting in an unspeakably cynical manner by placing the body of a Gaza woman in the coffin instead of Sherry Bibas, who was kidnapped along with her 2 sons and her husband, Yarden, during the Hamas attack on Israel on October 7, 2023. The United Nations Rights Chief, meanwhile, said the parading of the bodies of hostages in Gaza was abhorrent and flew in the face of international law. It's been just 1 month since President Trump was sworn in, and he's already turned Washington upside down. Now he's launched a massive deportation operation, settled scores with those he seems disloyal, and then cracked down on DEI initiatives, both inside and outside government. He's also been cutting budgets across agencies, with the IRS being the latest target, where many workers are now bracing for possible layoffs during the busy tax season. Tonight we ask, what are the unintended consequences of these mass layoffs and spending freezes? At a conservative conference, tech billionaire Elon Musk literally brought a chainsaw to celebrate his Department of Government Efficiency's efforts to help Trump slash the federal government. Musk is touting plans to return some of the money saved back to taxpayers, though that would need Congress approval, as Musk explains.
No, in fact, the actions that we're taking with the support of the president and the support of the agencies is what will save Medicare, what will save Social Security. Yeah. Because if the country goes insolvent if all the money is just spent on paying interest on debt, there's no money left for anything.
Yeah.
So that's the reason I'm doing this, is because I was looking at the big picture here, and it's like, man, our debt's getting out of control. The interest payments, the interest on the national debt now exceeds the entire Defense Department budget.
It's $1 trillion a year in
Yes.
interest. Just to carry the money that we owe is $1 trillion a year.
Yes.
That is unbelievable.
And rising rapidly. So like, I mean, a country is no different from a person. Country overspends, country goes bankrupt. Same as a person who overspends goes bankrupt. So it's not like optional to solve these things. It's essential.
Meanwhile, White House officials say the Trump administration is preparing to fire many IRS workers. An IRS executive told staff on Thursday that about 6,000 employees, roughly 6% of the agency's workforce, might be terminated right in the midst of the critical tax filing season. Now, this move is part of a radical downsizing effort targeting bank regulators, forest workers, rocket scientists, and tens of thousands of other government employees. In some cases, workers fired for alleged poor performance had previously received excellent reviews. Now, one former employee, Patrick Shea, expressed his dismay.
It was sad. I definitely felt lied to. Like, as we talked about earlier, you know, I had demonstrated a history of exemplary performance at work, and I think just reading that line about, you know, your service has demonstrated that your employment is no longer in the interest of the American people. I think that definitely hurt.
Still, the president shows no sign of slowing down. In his first month, he has signed more than 73 executive orders, with Musk's cost-cutting team operating in at least 18 departments and agencies. Could Germany be heading towards its most controversial elections in decades? Will the rising far-right reshape the nation's political landscape? As Germans prepare to vote this Sunday, 4 candidates vie for the chancellorship in a race that's likely to produce another fragile coalition government. But with the AfD polling second and mainstream parties refusing to work with them, who will actually lead Europe's largest economy? Take a look.
Germany holds a snap national election on Sunday, following the collapse of Chancellor Olaf Scholz's three-way coalition. Another uneasy coalition is the most likely result. Polls predict second place for the far-right Alternative for Germany, or AfD, which is putting forward a candidate for Chancellor for the first time. But no other main party will work with it, so forming a government is likely to be complicated. Here are the 4 candidates for Germany's next Chancellor. Germany's next Chancellor is likely to be Conservative Friedrich Merz. His opposition Conservative CDU-CSU bloc is way ahead in polls, but will need at least one partner. Merz moved his bloc further to the right than predecessor Angela Merkel. Last month, rivals accused him of breaking a so-called firewall against cooperating with the far right, when he passed a motion in Parliament with AfD support on cracking down on irregular migration. He has ruled out forming a government with the AfD. The CDU is pro-market and wants to cut red tape, encourage investments, and reduce energy prices to boost the economy. Scholz's coalition collapsed due to infighting, and his SPD, with 16%, has dropped to third place. But it's seen as likely to return as part of a grand coalition of centrists with Merz's CDU. Scholz presents himself as an experienced leader in command of the details. He rebuked US Vice President J.D. Vance after he endorsed the AfD as a political partner. Scholz favours helping Ukraine fend off Russia's invasion, but has recently struck a cautious tone, emphasising the need for diplomacy. The SPD wants to raise taxes for high-income earners and revive a wealth tax. Alice Weidel leads the far-right anti-immigration Alternative for Germany, which is polling second, but has pariah status among other parties in a country haunted by its Nazi past. Weidel has accused mainstream parties of disrespecting German voters in their treatment of her party. She met Vance on his recent visit to Munich when he endorsed her party as has billionaire Elon Musk. Vidal is openly gay, but her party has become the loudest voice against LGBTQ+ rights in Parliament. The AfD also wants Germany to ditch the euro, reintroduce the Deutschmark, and potentially leave the EU, and to end weapons deliveries to Kiev and resume good relations with Moscow. The Greens' Robert Habeck is the current economy minister. His party is just behind Scholz's on 13% of the vote. Habeck's Greens want a more open asylum policy, promoting state-backed sea rescue initiatives, and simplifying family reunification processes and enhancing integration. They also want reforms to allow higher public spending.
And the news continues here on NET25. We'll be right back. Etna. And tonight we report on Italy's Mount Etna, which has been erupting for days. Officials are urging tourists to stay away not only due to the eruption's dangers, but also because crowds are blocking emergency services. Here's more.
Italy's most famous and active volcano has been putting on quite a show, and it's been drawing big crowds of locals and tourists alike who want to see the rivers of molten lava flowing over a blanket of snow. The crowds are in the thousands, and some are creating problems. Tourists are blocking roads with their vehicles, making it difficult for emergency services to get through. Some are ignoring safety guidelines to see how close they can get to the lava flow, putting themselves in danger.
We are here. This is our territory, with a double role, that of rescuers, because in recent days there has been a large influx of tourists attracted by this lava flow, which, rightly, is beautiful, but at the same time many people have had problems. Some have hurt themselves, some have fallen while being around here.
Mount Etna's latest eruption began on February 11th. With fiery lava cascading from the newly active Bocca Nuova crater. The area around the volcano has been affected by explosive activity, with ash emissions that have had impacts on air traffic and nearby locations. Italian authorities monitoring the development of the eruption have issued warnings and, in some cases, restrictions on being in the surrounding areas to ensure safety.
People, given the ease of the route to get to the lava flow, ventured inappropriately. In fact, they were inadequately dressed. The last rescues yesterday or before yesterday, the people we found were with cold shoes and hypothermia, and a person who hurt himself last night fell into a snow hole and broke his ankle.
Volcanologists from the National Institute of Geophysics and Volcanology are studying the phenomena and monitoring the stability of the mountain and its possible evolutions. Standing at approximately 3,300 meters, Mount Etna looms over the town of Catania. It will remain one of the world's most active volcanoes. While eruptions are frequent, they rarely cause significant damage. Bruce Balmeo for NET25 World News.
The party said it would start preparations to disband and wind up its affairs after a meeting of its leadership amid a years-long national security crackdown in the China-ruled city. Founded in 1994 in the run-up to the city's return from British to Chinese rule in 1997, the Democratic Party grew into the largest and most successful opposition party, garnering strong public support in citywide elections. Under Hong Kong's so-called one country, two systems arrangement, the city is promised a high degree of autonomy and freedoms under Chinese rule. But in recent years, authorities have used the security laws to arrest scores of Democrats and shutter civil society groups and liberal media outlets. An overhaul of the electoral system in 2021 to ensure only pro-China patriots can govern Hong Kong also effectively shut the Democrats out from the political arena, marginalizing them further.
Developing democracy in Hong Kong is always difficult, and is especially difficult in the past few years. We see a lot of civil society groups or political parties disbanding or dissolving. This is not what we wanted to see. We hope that the one country, two system can be a successful system that can convince Hong Kong people and all the other people in the world that this is a sound system, this is a good system. We don't have that acute finance burden at this point. We can sustain the party's survival for a while if we only look at our account book. But all in all, I think that is a decision that we made, that we consider the overall political environment in Hong Kong and all those future plans that we can foresee, and that is the decision that we made.
In a significant move, the Trump administration has labeled 8 Latin American crime groups, including 6 Mexican drug cartels, as foreign terrorist organizations. Now, this list features notorious groups like El Salvador's MS-13 and Mexico's Sinaloa and Jalisco New Generation cartels. Now, this designation aims to intensify efforts against these cartels, granting U.S. agencies enhanced authority to combat their operations.
Following this action, the Pentagon has deployed unarmed MQ-9 Reaper drones over Mexico to monitor cartel activities. And these surveillance missions, which began under the Biden administration, have expanded under President Trump. The drones can be armed for precision strikes if necessary. Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum has expressed concerns over these developments, emphasizing the need for collaboration without infringing on Mexico's sovereignty.
First of all, there is nothing illegal. What we have is a collaboration and cooperation that has been going on for many years, not just now. Because today in the national security law, it is very clear what can be done and what cannot be done. And we are evaluating, assessing additional matters for the protection of our sovereignty. Because what cannot be allowed is that they do activities that are not part of collaboration or coordination.
Security experts suggest that this terrorist designation could pave the way for the direct U.S. military actions against these cartels.
Eventually, we may see operations by the U.S. Marines, for example, to capture a kingpin, do drone attacks, or attack a laboratory. We have to see if this is possible. Technically, I think the designation has many deficiencies, and it's still not clear what exactly they want to use the designation of criminal groups as terrorist organizations for.
However, debates continue regarding the potential impact on U.S.-Mexico relations and regional stability. As the situation unfolds, the extent of the Trump administration's actions against these cartels remains to be seen, especially concerning possible military involvement in Mexico, a move not seen since the Mexican-American War in 1848.
The concept of flying cars has long been a mainstay in the imaginings of the future, featuring in films like Blade Runner, The Fifth Element, and Back to the Future. Now, Aleph Aeronautics believe they are one step closer to making that future a reality. The California-based company has released videos showing their flying car, an ultralight version of the Aleph Model 0, taking off vertically and traveling over a parked car. Take a look.
The significance of this video is we really hope that it will have a similar impact as the Wright brothers video, in a sense that it proves to the humanity that the new mode of transportation is possible. It has the independently verifiable proof that that this new mode of transportation does work and does exist, and we hope it will start some kind of a new market, new economy for this new mode of transportations, which we call flying cars. For most people, for the general consumer, it's prohibitively expensive because it's expensive for us to produce one. But it's because it's a very low volume production and it's very inefficient. So it's not optimized for manufacturing. As we go further and it will be optimized for manufacturing, and as the volume increases, the end goal, again, that's not going to be the next year or the year after that, the end goal, it should be actually same level or less expensive than Toyota Corolla, Ford Focus, or anything like that, because it's less complex.
And with that, we end tonight's broadcast. For everyone here on NET25, I'm Alma Angeles. Thank you for joining us. Good night.